Welcome to Queued Up with Ziz and Pam. Thank you everyone for joining us on this particular segment. Pam and I are just going to really just have a conversation. And obviously we're having powerful conversations that question what it means to be educated in the 21st century. And she and I were just talking off air about just, what do you do as a parent? You know, what's our role? And I think this particular quote caught my attention. It's from Bentley University. Bentley University back in 2014 did some research in their findings. And one of the parents' perspectives was, it's one thing to educate a child with facts and figures. I am trying to teach my son to seek understanding, use rational thinking, ask smart questions, and encourage himself to challenge himself. I think we're all there. I think we all feel the same way. I know I do as a father of three. All three have launched. I think personally they're doing better than I am. So I'm super happy about that. And I don't know what I would do now in this current system. I do know one thing. I would definitely use the framework that we've been talking about for the last several episodes. But as far as like what actually is happening in the society in which we live now, it's a challenge. So to all you parents out there, I get it, I understand. We're here to support you in what you're going through. And because of our experience and the questions that we're asking, it's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one because, as we talked about in our last episode, we have a generation caught between two worlds. Literally, we're going into the fourth industrial revolution, which is technologically driven, and moving away from this information age. So the issue is not the answer; the issue is the question. And I think that this is what's a parent to do. You know, our role, we have decided that we wanted to have the answer for success. So it got predetermined that the answer for success was a college degree and a job, a white collar job, that was the answer, because we just want the answer. We just want to know, where do we plug our kid in and have them turn out just the way they should, that's acceptable to society, that gives them money, and therefore that meant to us that they would have a good life. Of course, we do know from the work of Viktor Frankl that just having money and adhering to external frameworks does not produce fulfillment and meaning, and in some ways can produce the exact opposite. So what's a parent to do? I think the first step is certainly recognizing that we don't know what to prepare our children for. So because we don't know those jobs of tomorrow, and the jobs of tomorrow, I mean, who knew cybersecurity would be one of the hottest fields? It doesn't require a college degree. Or blockchain is the future of record keeping. I mean, we have industries that are emerging.
So Pam, you just said something. You said cybersecurity does not require a college degree. So the question is, what does it require? What are the skills needed to gain a job in that industry?
Oh, well, the skill is not hard to acquire. The first step is interest. You know, again, I can't make my artist daughter become a cybersecurity analyst, even though that field is something that will have career is almost a misnomer today, right? Because it's changing so fast that you can't project out even our professional careers, like what we do with accounting and what we do with our legal industry. But for the cybersecurity, we know that these hackers, and staying ahead of hackers as fast as there's 3 million unfilled jobs over the next 2 years. And there's no one trained. So now they're training homeless people. They're training people as fast as they can get trained. But really, it starts with interest. If you've got a child who's interested in that kind of technology. it's a
Well,
good fit.
I'm going to add to it. Like I completely agree. It does start with interest. And I think sometimes this is where a good mentor or a great teacher comes in, because there might be a student who has, let's just say this particular student has traveled down a path of like, they've been a little mischievous, they've gotten into trouble, so on and so forth. And the reason why I'm using this as an example is because I didn't think of it this way. But I had a gentleman who worked in that particular field said, sometimes those are the students who are great at being able to think in a way to catch those individuals who are perpetuating those types of crimes. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think I don't think like that. I just don't. So when he mentioned that to me, I was like, wow. So it requires mentors or teachers to make that suggestion that this is a possible interest to a student who sometimes seems a bit mischievous, only because that student might be bored, or
Yes.
so on and so forth, because they're bored with the system, instead of using the framework that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. So it is interesting. I mean, we're talking about 3 million unfilled jobs, and
Yes.
these particular jobs pay very well.
Yes, they do. And they require a certificate that can be anywhere from 12 weeks to a year, depending on what you're doing. And it's a learn as you go. If
Yeah.
you try to go to college for this, 4 years, you are completely missing the whole boat about how fast we're changing. That's why this whole idea of 4-year degree is getting challenged. The California community college system, actually, their first online program was in cybersecurity for because, just think about it. We need protection in our personal accounts, business accounts, government accounts, military accounts. We have to stay on top of this. It's probably one of our number one issues today. But okay, so let's just go back to the role of the parent, which is to expose our children to multi-age, different kinds of activities and experiences to allow them to learn what they're interested in and get exposed to these new things that are coming out that will not be introduced in the school system as it is currently, designed. It's not like you move from English to math to what, it isn't. We live in an interconnected, interrelated, integrated society where it all matters. Humanities and engineering should be combined. But also the time frame that as fast as we're going. So for a parent, we can make the tough choices. Here comes the trade-offs, right? We can't have our cake and eat it too, okay? We have to say, okay, so if my value of my child who might be a techie, let's say, somebody who's really into computers and loves all this stuff, okay, well then, do they have to take AP classes, which in my opinion is standardized learning with anything with a bubble, with a finite answer, to me is not learning, okay? It teaches them that there is a specific answer, not the question. It teaches them to look at things as a specific answer, not in a framework that is broader, that answer might depend on your perspective, right?
Yeah.
Cowboys and Indians. Were the Cowboys really great, or from an Indian's perspective, not so good? Right? I mean, so.
Well, it's interesting. I think going back to what you said, the job of a parent and to ask questions. And I think part of that is reading, actually reading things outside of what we would normally read. One of the magazines that I typically try to read on a monthly basis is Fast Company. And the reason why is because all of a sudden, like, oh, wow, there's the company doing what? Wow, this, so you get introduced to companies doing different things. And then you can, of course, share that information with others. I would not have known, actually, this was an article, actually, it was a individual from LinkedIn who was interviewing, I think his name is Mr. Weiner. I may not be pronouncing that correctly, so please forgive me. But he had an interview series, and he was interviewing Carly Kloss, who is a supermodel. Now, here's what's really fascinating about this young woman. I'm calling her young because at the age of 25, she had already started coding with Carly. And what's really cool about her story is she comes from a family that's been really entrepreneurial in how they think. So it goes back to what you and I have been talking about as a parent. On a trip, they're talking about owning a company, playing Monopoly. How do you do X? How do you do Z? What do you do in this situation? So these were the conversations that she was having on a road trip with her parents and her other siblings. And consequently, I mean, she has these camps that are introducing coding to young women. So her mission is to empower young women and help them get into positions in STEM fields, so to speak. And also, she's really targeting women from every background that's possible.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think this could be happening at the dinner table, right?
Yeah.
It's like we have to be co-learners. As parents, we can take a breather now because none of us know. None
I'm
of us
laughing.
know, and we have to be co-learners. We go ahead.
Well, you said the dinner table. I'm like, dinner table? They might go, what is that?
Well, it's true because we're so busy shuttling our kids to sports that demand or extracurricular activities that demand their time 5-7 days a week. We need to challenge that. You know, that level, it's not even, I mean, we've shown the injuries, we've shown that narrow river of thinking. I mean, maybe there's an Olympian out there, but we still have to think of our mental health, which requires a broader perspective for our children. And we have to defend that. We have to say, no, we need to create the time and space, which means we have to look at, do they take the AP classes? Do they spend their summers preparing for the SAT or ACT? Do we say, send homework home because we're going to operate our entire home around what you say we need to have our children produce? Okay,
Well,
how did we give up that freedom?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, like that freedom. And, you know, so you said two things, dinner table and having conversation. Those require what? You know, putting that device away and actually interacting. But more importantly, it requires time. And we currently have the time to have these types of conversations with the people who are in our household because we're supposed to be staying in. And hopefully these conversations are taking place. But you know what popped into my mind is, you know, currently the NFL has a football player who is on the Kansas City Chiefs, my former team from a long, long time ago. His name is Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. He actually petitioned the NFL to put the word doctor on his jersey, but the NFL, being who they are, said no. But to me, that's a missed opportunity. Here's a young man who went through the process of becoming a doctor, and he's also a current starter for the Chiefs, the Super Bowl winning Chiefs. Mm-hmm. So, like you said, I mean, he actually said that his ability to be on the field and be in these situations has helped him operate within his field of being a doctor. Mm-hmm. So they're not mutually exclusive. They're actually intertwined. Mm-hmm. You know, there's also other individuals who've gone on from the field of sports to become doctors. So taking those skills and translating them into other fields is very possible. But I do think it's conversations that take place between parents, great teachers, and also mentors.
Well, I agree. And the other thing is, we are so focused on our children being the change makers of tomorrow. We need to be the change makers of today. We need to be the role models of what it means to face these things, which we're having to face anyway. We're here to adapt and adjust who we are to be able to respond, not be focused so much on our children someday handling it. We need to be the change makers.
Well, I think the fact that what we've done over the last several weeks is a great example for our own children. By coming together and collaborating, you know, whether it's just the two of us, also with Cara, who you all may not see on camera, but she is an integral part of our team. Yes, brilliant, great part of our team.
Yes.
And someone who doesn't have a college degree.
Yeah, she figures everything out. She will learn because she's so interested in it.
Yes.
So she will solve the puzzle. If something's not working, there's some widget on the website that's not, doing it. She just learns. And I think this is the future of education, which is self-directed learning, following your own interests and finding the resources, because there's too many we have too much noise. There's not a single pathway. You don't go to college for some of these things. You don't go to school for some of these things. They're not keeping up. We have to find it on the internet. We have to find it in classroom, in a community college. We have to really pursue our interests. And it's so, what I really love. So Viktor Frankl, who transformed so much of the world because he put meaning on the map as something that was critical, a critical motivation to being human. He was a self-directed learner. So he was a perfect honor roll student until he hit junior high. Junior high, he became really interested in psychology and this whole concept of meaning. And he started taking adult classes. Well, he was still in junior high school. What is that? You're 12 or 13?
Yeah.
Then goes on to start a correspondence as a teenager with Freud and begin to understand his ideas. And then he goes one step further and challenges those ideas. So Freud kicks him out of his society. And Adler, who was doing this individual psychology, he's like, oh no, that's more, and who had also been part of the Freud group. Oh no, I like that. And then when he disagreed with Adler, he gets kicked out of his society. He's like, whoa, and so he took, and his grades dropped, but he kept bringing these ideas into his classrooms. He learned hypnosis at 15. He was out there teaching himself based on his interests. Now imagine if we teach our children that their education and their pursuit of their interests and what matters to them is their responsibility. Go for it.
Yeah, no limits.
No limits.
No limits. Like, just go for it. And and there's students who've done that. I love it when I see a student set up in the neighborhood with a lemonade stand. I'm like, yes. What pops into my mind is this guy, the crazy Gary Vaynerchuk, who talked about the fact that he used to have that. And the example that you just gave, he took his parents' store and essentially during that time frame started learning, like, okay, the internet was new. How am I going to use that? How am I going to publicize that store? How am I going to use ads? No one taught him. He taught himself. And consequently, the culmination of all those, we can call them failures, we can call them struggles, but essentially the accumulation of the hiccups has him where he is today.
Exactly. And that's a relatable, because it makes him relatable, because we all have those. We just don't want to necessarily acknowledge it. But I think this idea as parents that somehow we can turn our kids over to an institutionalized system to produce them to be people who are citizens. Whenever they say, well, they have to learn citizenship, I'm like, it's a fake environment. That's not citizenship. That is simulated, not reality. Because it doesn't accept everybody. It doesn't honor diversity of thought. It doesn't honor diversity of learning. It doesn't honor any of those things. So how in the world can it promote citizenship?
That is so well said. And it brought me back to one of the quotes. I'm not going to be able to remember it, but it's essentially, it's Lenore Skenazy. I don't know if you remember that name, but she is the woman who put her son, she put her son on the subway.
Yeah.
And then she wrote an article about it, and then people went ballistic. They're like, oh my God, what are you doing? And the funny part about it is, anyone who's grown up in New York City, I did not, but anyone who's grown up in New York City said, well, that's not abnormal. I used to take the subway all the time as a child. So when she did that, she's like, she caught a lot of attention, and consequently basically said, and exactly what we're talking about is, create the role for your child to grow in. Now, she had 2 children, so she said, my other son had no interest in doing that. So that was my control study. But her other son who did, and he's fine.
Yes.
He's absolutely fine. But the beauty of this particular story to me is she looked at her one son and said, you know what, this is what he needed. He was asking, he wanted to do it. She took off the reins and got out of the way.
Yes. Yeah. You could do it within the framework.
Well, yeah, not only that, but then if you're a child and your parents trust you and God willing, everything worked out. But wow, imagine the confidence that you gain from that.
Yep. Well, and it goes to, we spend so much time trying to externally protect them and bubble wrap them, and it has not given them the ability to navigate reality. I mean, we have this whole positivity, happiness objective that we've decided for our kids, that being happy is what the ultimate goal in life is. And of course, that is absolutely the most detrimental, because you're ashamed if you're unhappy, which will happen because the world has things that are not happy. And this, like Susan David, I think I spoke about her, if I haven't, she has a TED Talk called The Power and Gift of Emotional Courage, which is, you need to have deep depths for great heights, but this tyranny of positivity that we've created has really, really harmed kids, because they're not allowed to feel down. They're not allowed to say, this is hard, and to struggle. It's like, oh, no, you have to do this because that is what we value, is everything has to be fine and you have to be fine. It's not
Well,
happening.
and that's, of course, me being a sports guy, I'm going to throw in a sport, like, when you miss a shot, you lose a game. That feeling, I mean, being able to identify your feelings is an important, it's critical. It's a critical lesson for us all, and then, you have to process it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right. It is interesting, though, I think, in a way, for us parents, and we're not trying to beat you up, parents. We know it's tough. We know it's hard. It's challenging.
It's tough.
I don't know if you all remember, but I can tell you, my son told me basically, Dad, I got this. I don't need you checking on my grades. He actually was telling me, hey, Dad, move out of the way. And because I finally listened to him, he was heard. So that in and of itself taught me a valuable lesson. Listen to them. That would probably be the way that I would end this segment, is by parents, listen to your children.
Well, one other thing is also get a life. Show them what it means to be an engaged citizen. Show them what it means to be a fulfilled person. Show them what it means to have different kinds of emotions and different kinds of experiences. We need to not only be the learner, we need to be the change makers, we need to be the role models, we need to be the mentors. And in so many ways, it's a relief, because we don't have to know everything to teach them, because we can't. We can honor who they are and learn with them.
So a few questions popped into my mind as you just said that. And one is, when you said get a life, I would love for us to dive into this particular subject, because I think how a male approaches it and how a female approaches is a little bit different. And I think it's important for us, since we're having these conversations, is just to put some framework around it and ask the hard questions. So I would love to hear from the audience as to what their thoughts are on this particular subject. So with that being said, get a life.
Be the learner.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Both Pam and I are so appreciative, and these powerful conversations are leading to some answers. So we really appreciate it. So again, thank you for joining us on Queued Up with Ziz and Pam.
Thank you.